Hi, this is a tutorial for beginners who are for the first time in Ableton, and we're going to basically make a track from scratch using Ableton, Live 9 and Serum. If you're starting out and you'd like to make some music, you don't know pretty much where to start, then you can follow this tutorial at your own pace. You can stop the video and just follow my instructions on how to make a track. Yeah, if anything's unclear, then just drop me comments in the comment section. And also you can book a one-on-one session on Skype with me. If you prefer reading to watching tutorials like this, then we've got an ebook for you, which you can check out also in the description. And yeah, let's start the tutorial. So you'll need a couple of things. Of course, a computer. I'm using a Mac, but you can do all of this on a Windows machine. It doesn't really matter. Use any computer you have. And you need also a pair of OK headphones or studio monitors. But for your first track, it'll be okay even if you use those cheap, Apple earpods. They will be alright for your first project. And you'll need, of course, and don't worry about monitors for now, just use OK headphones. That will be a good start. So you'll need Ableton Live 9.5. That's the one of the newer versions, 9.5 or higher. And the only difference between those versions and previous versions is just slight differences in layout. So just some things could be displayed a little bit differently. So also we'll include a link to where you can buy Ableton in the description. And also you'll need to have installed a plugin which is called Serum, and it's an awesome synthesizer. It's a very powerful synthesizer and it's very simple to use, and I think it's one of the best right now. There's a lot of great people using that synth. You can do a lot of stuff in there. So also buy the synth and install it. It's easy. And there's also a link in the description so that you can buy the synth. Okay, and another thing, we've got prepared for you a free download with some sounds that we're going to be using. Yeah, so just download it from the description. And when you've got all of these elements, then just open up your Ableton program and follow my steps. So we're going to make this sweet little future bass drop. So we'll go from here, from scratch to this project. So yeah, I've got this. This will be our final result of the tutorial. So 7 elements, and let me play all of that together. So it's a sweet like a future bass drop. And there's nothing crazy, but you'll learn some useful techniques here. I wish I knew all these things when I was starting out. Let's jump right into making it. There we go. So when you load up Ableton for your first time, then it should look like this, or very similar to what I have on my screen right now. The first thing you need to know is that Ableton has 2 views. So there's this view, and when you click the Tab key on your keyboard, you go into the other view. And the first view is called Session View. It was for mainly performing live and collecting ideas. I don't personally use it that much. And the other view, this view, is for arranging songs and mostly for the production side of things. So just make sure to click Tab and to go into the arrangement view, and we're going to work almost only in this view. Okay, so what you see right now on the screen is that you have 2 tracks, so 2 horizontal lines. So this will be our first track, this will be our second track. The first one is called MIDI and the second one is called audio. And that's because every single sound in Ableton is coming from one type of those tracks. So either from an audio track, either from a MIDI track. And we'll cover the audio type of tracks later. So you can just click on it and press delete or backspace on a Windows machine and it will disappear. And let's just focus on the MIDI track for now. Yeah, now we've got one track, the MIDI track, and what we use these tracks for is to play instruments. So you can play a piano, we can play a synthesizer, we can play drums, any instrument you can probably imagine, like a saxophone, whatever. Every instrument, you can play it on a MIDI track, okay? So, for example, now we can take our Serum synthesizer that you need to have downloaded already. So let's type in, this is a search bar in Ableton. We can type in Serum and click plugins, and you'll probably see under VST and user, there should be a device called Serum. So how do we put this instrument on a track? The most simple way is to just double click the instrument and it will show up. Now make sure that this little dot is red. And what it enables you to do is to, when you'll press keys on your keyboard from A to L, then you'll get some sound. And you can basically play melodies on your keyboard in Ableton, or like on a MIDI keyboard. I've got one here. So if you get a MIDI keyboard turned on, then you'll be able to press keys and a sound will come out of the synth. And the same thing is with every other instrument. We could find a grand piano and we could put it onto that track and we could play it. So that's the way you play instruments. But don't worry, you don't have to know how to play the piano. It's all simple stuff. You can also you can click all these keys and you'll get the sound as well. So whatever you like. But the sound, the type of the sound, and another thing that is very useful is that you can switch octaves. You can move up and down the keyboard by pressing Z and X keys on your keyboard. So now we're playing these keys, but it ends on L, so if you press X, we can play higher keys, and the same with Z. We're playing lower keys. But I hate this sound. The initial sound, the starting sound in Serum is very harsh and not too pleasant to my ears. So what we can do is we can press this right arrow here next to default 3 times and you'll get something called a sine wave. Now if you press these keys, you'll get a very much smoother sounding sound. So this type of sound is called a sine wave and it's very useful for bass instruments. But before you play any bass notes, just remember to put your headphones on because the lower parts can sound very quiet on laptop speakers if you're using those. So just remember to put headphones, earpods or something on and you'll be good to go. So I've got a tip for you here. So you're probably wondering what is all that other stuff in the synth for? And it's actually very simple. All these sections, sub, noise, oscillator A and B, all of that is just generate sound. So this whole box generates sound. For example, our sine wave right now. Or we could turn on the B oscillator and we would get that initial sound. And all that other stuff, the filter section and this whole section, this just edits the sound coming from these 4 sources. So that's something to bear in mind. The layout can look complicated at first, but when you get used to it, it's actually very logical. So keep with me. Okay, now we could find like a simple bass line. We could play around on our keyboard and just find something that sounds cool, and we could record it into the program. And I'll show you how we can do this. So let me move this window for now, and let's click at the beginning, and you can follow me while doing this, remember. So what I can do is we can press this record button and press any key, and then press stop here, and when you play this clip back, it will be recorded. And that's basically how you record stuff. So just let's select it and press delete or backspace. So something that can help you with it is this button right here with these two dots. When you click it and record something, you'll hear a clicking sound, which will help you play in time. So let's try recording something in, something very random. Now you can play in time, and you know when a bar starts and all of that stuff. So that's how you record stuff in, if you would like to play some instruments and record stuff. But actually, you're lucky because I made a bass line for you. So we can just delete this. Yeah, I turned off the clicking sound. It's called a metronome, by the way. And yeah, now you can go to the folder from the downloaded free folder. Okay, so let's go to that folder, and here you'll find a file called bass.mid. And what this file is, it's something called a MIDI file, which you can drag onto your MIDI track, and that will play something that I made on my computer. So let's go ahead and click this file, go back into Ableton, and just drop it onto the very beginning of the track. And you'll see there's my bassline that I recorded myself. So there may be a pop-up saying if you'd like to import the tempo, something like this. So just make sure you click don't show again and no, because the default tempo of our track is okay. Just make sure it's 120, and that's alright. So if we now play this clip, you'll hear my bass line. There's nothing crazy, but it will fit with the rest of the track, so just bear that in mind. Also, you're maybe wondering how am I playing this clip without pressing this play button. So I'm just pressing the space key, and it's very useful, so just remember that. Okay, so yeah, this is what it should sound like. And if you select this clip, so just click on this bar, it will probably be called, okay, like bass or something. So just click on this clip. There's a shortcut in Ableton which allows you to loop certain parts of your track. So for example, we would like this clip to play in a loop. Then we can simply click Command L or Control L on a Windows machine, which stands for loop. And you'll see these like this bar appearing up here. So if we now play this little clip, it will be looped automatically. So let's listen. And it will play endlessly. Let me take a closer look now at our bass line. So if you wanted to just zoom in and out at certain parts of our track, then there's this gray area, which when you hover your mouse over that gray area, you'll see that your mouse will turn into a hand with a magnifying glass. You can click on that area and drag your mouse down, and you'll zoom in and out. You can also move right and left in time by clicking and dragging left and right. It seems quite confusing at first, but when you get used to it, it's alright. So just get used to zooming in and out to certain parts, and you should be good to go. Let's just close this window for a second. We can press this X button. If your hearing is average, then you probably don't know which notes am I playing. If you wanted to check which notes are those on a keyboard, then we could select this clip, and now let's look at the bottom part of the screen. So this bottom part of our screen displays our device, which is Serum. So this is our device view. This is called the device view, the bottom part. But if you click this tab, it's almost like a hidden part. If we click this part now, it suddenly switches to the keyboard, like a piano roll view. This is called a clip view because you have to have this clip selected first to view it. If we didn't select the clip, then it would say no clip selected. So make sure you have selected this clip. And you can switch between those two views by clicking these two tabs at the bottom. But actually clicking isn't too handy when you're producing really fast and you would like to make fast changes. So there's another shortcut for you, and it's Shift and Tab. So don't confuse this with Tab, which switches from the session to arrangement view. Shift Tab allows you to switch from the device view, which is Serum in our case. If you press Shift Tab, then it goes to the clip view, in which we can see the notes and we can edit them and do all kinds of cool stuff with them. So just Shift Tab, and we also had Command L and space. Okay, so let's go into the clip view. And if you now hover your mouse over any of these keys, you'll see on the left that you know exactly what name of the key is. So it's very useful for learning the key names. And just make sure that this fold button here is off, because that will only display the notes that we are already playing. That's also useful, but not too useful for what we're trying to do right now. Okay, so now if you click the gray bar here, this gray bar, and you click it on C1, for example, and if you drag your mouse right, you'll zoom in at these notes. And if you drag your mouse left, you'll zoom out. That's how you zoom on your keyboard. And if you move up and down, you move up and down the keyboard. And here on this bar behaves just like the bar at the top of our timeline, at the top of our program. So up and down, zooming in and out, and left and right, just moving through the timeline. So yeah, the zooming is a little bit weird at first, so just make sure you're comfortable with it before we move on. And okay, so let's say we recorded this clip that we have here, and you would probably want to fix some things to make sure that we're playing perfectly in time. For example, what we could do is we could resize these blocks. If we wanted this note to be longer, then we could click on this ending of this box and we could make it longer or shorter. Now if we zoomed in, we could make more kind of precise adjustments, because there's all these lines which act like magnets almost, and they're very useful for resizing your notes. They're called a grid, by the way. Also, we can add new notes if we wanted, for example, another note here. So we could double click on any of these blocks, on any of these areas, pretty much anywhere, and there will be a new note. We could zoom in and like fix its length or something, and just click and delete it, or backspace. Just make sure you can add in new notes and resize them, and then just delete and get back to what we have. So probably following this logic, maybe you're wondering if there's a way to add in all these notes without having to record this clip. So we could select like this area on our first track and click, right click, but it's important to click in this area, on the area of this bar. It's important to click here, and you can click insert MIDI clip, and that will insert a new blank clip. But if you click underneath that, there will be no such option, so just make sure you're clicking in the upper area of this selection and click insert MIDI clip, and now we could draw in anything we like. You see I'm inserting new notes. That's how we could create this exact clip without having to record it. Let's get back into our making of the track. So just click this and delete it. I just wanted to show you how also you can make such a bassline. Let's get back to our clip, and let's get back to our device view, and let's play this clip once again, and you'll probably notice something like a pop sound at the beginning of every note. Let's give it a quick listen. You've probably noticed that's very slight, but on good headphones you'll hear that will sound a little bit disturbing. So now go back to our Serum device, and you can, when you're in the device view, you can click this button here. You're back seeing the device. So what we can do right now is increase the attack of our bass instrument. So the pop sound is created because this sine wave comes in very doesn't come in gradually, but it comes suddenly. But if we made these transitions a little bit smoother, so if that's now, for example, the curve of our note, if we made these transitions smoother, so if this is what our volume looked like, it went from quieter to louder, it didn't go straight down but went like this, it will be much smoother. So we can, that's what you use envelopes for. So envelopes, we're talking about this area in the synth. They can move a knob for you, and that's all they do. And you need to know that the first envelope always controls the volume of every note. So the attack, we can just turn it up a little tiny bit so that the pop disappears. And that's all. But now we've got a pop at the end, so we can turn also the release knob a little bit up, and it should sound perfectly alright. Okay, so let's leave the envelope for now. We can do a lot of crazy things with it. But let's now go to another tab of our Serum device. So there are 4 tabs here. Let's click the second one called Effects. Effects, it's a shortcut for effects. And if you click that, then you see all of the crazy effects that we have here. And I want you to turn on distortion. Yeah, hear what it sounds like. If we don't hear it well, then you can turn up the drive and you'll hear really what it does. It sounds very fat now. So we can use distortion to make stuff more present and more aggressive sounding. So let's turn this drive knob to around 70%. And now let's decrease the amount of this effect by turning down this mix knob to around 30%. And that's all. It sounds good to me, and the bass should be more present on different speakers. Like if you played it on laptop speakers, maybe you'd hear a little bit of the bass line, so that's okay. Let's now close it, and we can just rename our track to bass. And how do we rename track? You can right click and click rename. Also there's the shortcut Command R to rename stuff, so let's type in bass. And yeah, we've got one track. Good job. Okay, so now we can add some drums to finally make things sound cool. So let's right click on this gray area here and click insert audio track, and an audio track will appear. It should look like this, and it's the exact audio track that we've deleted before. We use audio tracks to play audio clips, so you could put any like recorded sound onto an audio track and it will play. So it's especially useful for drums, which are audio samples. So people just record real drums or make drum sounds in many different ways, and they export it into audio files, like those files which we could put in a player like iTunes or Windows Media Player. We can put those files into our program onto an audio track and it will play, and from these files we can make all kinds of different drum patterns, if that makes sense. So if we go back to our folder and if we click on samples, then you'll see all of these files. So without those two, so you'll just see hi-hat, kick, snare and tom. That's the drums that we're going to be using. So let's select the kick, which we're going to add first, and let's drag it onto our track and let's place it at the very beginning, and this is what it should look like. And let's play the track, see what it sounds like. So we've got only one sound. But now you need to look, it probably should look like this, the bottom part of our tracks part of the screen. So there's like a hidden track here called master, and if you press this arrow here, it will expand. And if we play this clip now, this volume kind of bar turns red, and that's a bad sign. That's a sign that we are exceeding 0 decibels with our instruments. Basically, they are too loud and they will sound terrible. So we just need to turn both of these tracks down in volume so that everything's safe. This area we can use to manipulate the track volume, and if we drag it down to around minus 15 decibels, it should be alright now. And let's do the same thing with the kick, and you can actually click on it and just type in minus 15, enter or 10, and we shouldn't see red. This area shouldn't turn red now. You'll probably notice that everything's much quieter, so just let's turn up the volume. We're good to go. Okay, so we would probably like that the kick plays more frequently. So let's, you probably know how to copy and paste stuff if you work on a computer. So it's done by clicking Command or Control C, and pasting is Command or Control V. We can just copy this kick and paste it onto the beginning of every bar, and it will sound like this. So okay, now we can zoom in at this part of our clip. You'll see all of these numbers at the top, and you can also paste this kick onto this position, which is called 1, 2, 4, and this is just before the half of our bar. So, and this kick is also going to play in this position in every single bar, so we can just select this first bar and click Command D, that's a shortcut, and it will duplicate our pattern from here onto every single bar. So just select this area and click Command D 4 times. And that's all for the kick for now. Now we can proceed on to the snare. Let's insert a MIDI track this time, the same way we did with the other track, but selecting MIDI. For the snare, I will show you quite a different technique of placing drums. Of course, we could make an audio track and just place the sample just like the kick. That would work, but the thing is, the same thing can be achieved with a MIDI track, and it's very useful for snares. So bear with me, and let's go back to our folder, and let's select the snare and let's drag it, but this time we're not dragging it onto the beginning of the track, because this is a MIDI track that won't work. We will have to drop it in this area, just like the Serum device, in this area where the Serum device was placed. So let's just drop it here. It says drop an instrument or sample here, so that's a good sign. And yeah, now we've got our sample loaded up onto this MIDI track. And if we now press keys on our keyboard from A to L, reminding you, we will hear this exact sample, the snare. And we can play it just like any instrument. So if we go up in keys, we will hear a higher pitch of the sound, and if we go down, we will hear lower pitches of the sound. So we can play it just like any other instrument. And when you change octaves by pressing Z and X, just try that a couple of times, you'll see in this area which octave are you in. So just make sure you're in the octave which says C3 to D4. Okay? And now if you press the A key, that will be the C3 key, and that's a very important key on the keyboard. So the C3 key is the exact sound of the sample without pitching it up or down. So it's the exact sound that we would get from if we put this sound, for example, in iTunes or in Windows Media Player. It would sound exactly like this. So that's what we want. We don't want to pitch it up or down. And just if you note on Ableton 9.5 or higher, this snare sample may look a little bit different because they changed the layout a little bit, but it's nothing that complicated. You'll probably find all of these things in here also there. And I think we have a video already on that, so if there is one, I'll leave a link to it in the description. Yeah, and an important thing, because if you press the A key and just and you don't hold it, the sound may just be cut off, and that's controlled by the release knob. And the release knob is the exact same thing that we were fixing in the Serum device, which just controls how long it takes for the sound to disappear after you release the button. So let's just turn it up to all the way to 60, and that's fixed. It will always play the whole sound for us. So for the snare, we'll use the exact technique from that we tried with the bass here. So let's select this area and right click in the upper area and insert a MIDI clip, and let's click Shift and Tab to go into the clip view. And now let's zoom in at our C3 note, because that's the only one that we're going to be using. And it's, if you pay attention, it's like the middle of the keyboard. It's almost, yeah, it's exactly in the middle of the keyboard, so it shouldn't be hard to find. So let's just place the snare on every half of every bar. So here, 4 times, double clicking, and it should sound alright. Let's hear with the kick and with the bass, selecting this clip and pressing space. Sounds more like a beat, doesn't it? Okay, now let's proceed to the most fun part of the track, which will be making of the main synth. So let's make a new MIDI track, as usual. And just like with the snare, let's drag a device on it. But this time, let's drag the Serum device, just like with the bass. So we could double click the Serum device, or we can drag it here, just like the sample. Now let's go back to let's close this and go back to our folder. And there's a MIDI file called CHORDS, and you can just drag it and drop it onto the track. And let's hear what it sounds like by now. Sounds pretty terrible. So first of all, we can solo this track so that we hear only the fourth track. And let's go inside Serum and look at what's going on here. Let's look at the first oscillator here. So this is the only oscillator playing. We've got two oscillators in Serum. From the 4 parts that generate sound, these two, oscillator A and oscillator B, are the things that create sound. The most important elements. So we've got one waveform, which is called a saw wave. We're going to add more voices. So what we could do is, if we wanted this synth to sound larger, you could turn on another oscillator, and we would have two of the same waveforms playing. But if we want to add more of these waveforms, for example 5 waveforms, then we don't have enough oscillators to do that. So a handy option is an option called unison. We can drag this box up, and you'll see 4 more lines appearing. These 4 lines are additional voices, additional waveforms within one oscillator. So let's hear what it sounds like. It's going to sound pretty. It's going to be larger, but it's still going to be aggressive sounding. That's what it sounds like with more voices. This detune knob, let's see. Check out what it does. When I will move it, you'll hear the difference. So when I move it up, the lines spread more. So like the synth sounds much wider, much bigger. But if we go too far, it loses that melodic value. If we go too narrow, it's going to sound just like at the beginning. So let's set it to like 10 o'clock. It's going to be alright. So there's some new terminology that you need to wrap your head around. So we've got an oscillator, which is the thing that generates sound. We've got a waveform, which is the type of the sound coming from an oscillator. So for example, here we've got a saw wave, and the bass is playing a sine wave. And unison just allows you to duplicate the voices, the waveforms inside one oscillator to make the sound of the synth larger. So finally, let's make the synth less aggressive. So in order to do that, you'll need to turn on the filter section here. And let's hear what it sounds like now. It's much more smooth. What it does is best described by moving this cutoff filter. I'll move it all the way up, and when we gradually move it down, you'll hear less and less of the harsh high frequencies. So we're just basically cutting off high frequencies with this filter. Because the lower frequencies are passing through, this type of filter is called a low pass filter. That's because the lower frequencies are passing through the filter and we're always cutting off the high frequencies. Accordingly, there's also a high pass filter, so it would be the exact opposite. It would be this shape. Let's get back to what we had there. Now we're going to make this knob move for us automatically in time so that it creates cool movement. So we're going to use for that envelopes and LFOs. So of course we could press record and move this knob. That will record the movement of the knob for us. We won't be too precise by just moving our mouse, and there's actually a much easier option for automating the movement of one knob. So we can use two things, envelopes and LFOs. And I've already told you that envelopes can be used for just turning some knobs for you. The first envelope always manipulates the volume. So let's go into the second envelope. And before we change anything in the second envelope, just make sure your cutoff knob is all the way down. This is going to be our starting position. And from that starting position, we will move the knob up. Okay, so selecting envelope 2, and we have to change some settings here. So the attack will be around 680 milliseconds. Okay, and something around this. And so these 600 milliseconds, probably are wondering what is that. That is just the time that it is going to take for a knob to go all the way up. So let's hear what it sounds like. Let's put that envelope onto our cutoff knob. That's basically done by dragging this little 4 arrow sign all the way to the cutoff knob and just dropping it. And now you'll hear that the knob is moving for you. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. And let's take a closer look at the cutoff knob for a second. So for a second I'm going to zoom in at this area. So let's take a closer look at the cutoff knob. If we play the clip, notice that a blue dot goes around the circle. It always indicates the current position of the knob. The current position of a knob without an envelope, and so this white part always indicates shows from where the envelope is acting, where the envelope starts, and the blue line around the knob just shows you how far is the envelope going. So in this case it goes all the way up, all the way to 100%, and we can modify the amount of this envelope by dragging down this blue line icon. We can drag it down and up, and we can modify the amount of the cutoff. For example, yeah, it's around 70% right now. So let's drag it to 30%. Because we're going to be using another modulation here, which will sound really cool. So the other modulation will be an LFO. So what's the difference between an LFO and an envelope? An envelope is a single movement. For every note we are playing, there's a single movement of an envelope. One movement per note, okay? But the LFO, on the other hand, performs that same action as an envelope, but in a loop. So we can set the curve of our modulation here, and it will loop for as long as we're holding the note. So if we now put this LFO on a cutoff and I play a note, you hear that it goes up and down and up and down in a loop. Let's change its rate, the speed, to 16th notes. So 16 notes per bar, just dragging up this rate knob here. It will sound much faster now. Sounds much more interesting right now. So if we now change the amount of the LFO to around half, now we will get a even cooler effect. So it will move at first only to the half, but when the envelope goes higher, we will move the LFO will go even further in time. We could add even more, like 58% is okay. Okay, so that would be almost everything for the synth. And a cool thing we can do now is we can add a slight reverb effect to the synth. So first just switch to the effects tab. You can find reverb here. Probably remember this effect from like talking in a church. Yeah, so it's like an echo effect. So we don't want so much of the mix of the reverb here, so we can just drag down the mix knob to around 10%. You can see the exact value underneath my mouse, and yeah, sounds right to me. That would be all for the synth. We can close it, and also we can turn down this synth by around -6 dB, so we can type in -6 here, and let's play all of our tracks together. Okay, now let's mess around a little bit with the volumes of our 4 tracks. So if you press tab, you'll be back in the session view. There are really cool volume faders here. So you can drag this line up. So you can just see my volumes here. Yours should be around the same values. And you can see the exact volume values here in these boxes. So you can just take a second and type in these numbers. That's just my really fast volume mix for now. Should sound like this. Okay, so now let's look at another element. Let's make a hi-hat pattern. So it's going to add some more rhythm to the beat. And to start, let's just make a new MIDI track as usual. And let's drag a sample from a folder called hi-hat, of course, onto this track at the bottom. And in this genre, it will be like trap, future bass. Very fast hi-hats are very common, so we could make them just like the snare. If we wanted to make those hi-hats really fast, then we could insert a new MIDI clip and do it that way. But we would have to insert a lot of these hi-hats. For example, in this area we would have to have 16 hi-hats if you wanted to play 16 hi-hats per bar. That would be a lot of clicking or copy and pasting. But actually there's a faster way to add hi-hats onto such a track, and we don't have to copy and paste too much. And that option is called Arpeggiator. So you can find Arpeggiator, or just type in ARP and click on MIDI Effects, and here you should find an Arpeggiator effect. And now just double click that effect and it will load up onto the track, and it's on the left of the hi-hat sample. Okay, so now when you play the sample, when we hold our A key, for example, on our keyboard, you will hear that we are playing the sample, but it's looped. It's like we're playing now eighth notes. You can see it up here. The rate knob just says how fast are we playing those notes. So if you wanted those notes to be faster, then we would just increase this rate knob to like 1/16, or we would have to drag it down a little bit to 1/16, and it should sound like this. And that's way more trappy. And okay, now's an interesting thing. So if we didn't have the arpeggiator on, and we pressed on a key, we would hear just the sample once. That's it. And now if we turn on the arpeggiator, it will play in its desired tempo. And what this arpeggiator does is it just changes the information going into the instrument, which is the sample in our case. So it changes the information from like play the sample once to play the sample 16 times per bar. And it does this before the information from our keyboard actually gets transformed into the sound by the instrument. So that's why we place the arpeggiator before the hi-hat. And we also, accordingly, could place some effects after the hi-hat. But the difference between those effects before the hi-hat and after the hi-hat is that these before modify the information going into the instrument, and these effects after the hi-hat just modify the sound coming from the instrument. So these before are called MIDI effects because they are changing the MIDI information coming from our keyboard, and these after instruments are called audio effects. You can see it up here. And we could also insert some audio effects from this menu and drag it there, but we don't want to do it for now. So, okay, now let's zoom in and let's select this area from here to here. And this is the area where I'm going to add those hi-hats. So just right-clicking and inserting a MIDI clip, going to this view, and I'm inserting a C3 note all the way all over the clip. And now when we play this part, it will of course play 16th notes. Now a cool thing I wanted to do is I wanted to change the tempo of these hi-hats, but just in this area before the second bar. And the way we can do this is we can just select this area and click our rate knob, and now it will say up here arpeggiator synced rate, and the red line will also appear here. So now you can just hover your mouse over this red line, make sure it turns blue, so just a tiny bit below the line, and just drag it down by 2 steps. Okay, 2 steps, and now it should play faster. Yeah, now we could do the same thing for our hi-hats volume, because now they are very robotic. They are sounding like they are coming out from a machine, and we could mess around with the volume of this hi-hat to make it sound more human. So a cool thing for adjusting volumes is called utility, and you can find it in audio effects and drag it after the device. So here's the utility, and you can now double click it and it will land after the device, or you can drag it there, drag and drop it there. Yeah, so what it does is this gain knob acts just like the volume. So if we turn it down, you notice the volume changes. We can do the exact thing with this knob that we did with the rate knob. So we can just click it and we can edit this line. And so now let's click on this line up here, and a dot will appear saying it's 0 decibels. This is called the breakpoint of an envelope. And if we add another dot like this and we drag it down as well, so that's how we bend the line, and the gain up will always follow this line. So you'll see now it says 24 and it will go up, goes to 0. We can check these values by hovering the mouse over those dots, and that's how we check the values. And I will just now mess around with this line, and I'll tell you my exact values in a second. So what I have is this line goes from -24 to -2 decibels, then it goes down to -6.336 decibels, and then it goes back to 0 decibels. So you can start from the end, click on 0, go down by -6, go to -2, and back to -24. You don't have to have these exact values. And if you would like to make more precise changes, you can expand this track by dragging down this line. And if you hold Command and click on these automation, on these breakpoints, then they will move up and down. You can move it up and down, but it will move much slower, and it will give you more precision for such adjustments. Okay, so now it sounds less robotic. Let's give it a listen. It sounds better to me, but utility, this effect has also another awesome option, which is called panorama. The hi-hat by default plays left and right speakers, and you can see it up here. We've got two lines. The left one is for the left speaker, the right one is for the right speaker. But we can choose just the right speaker or just the left speaker, and we can actually change the balance of these two speakers in time by using the panorama option. So if we drag the panorama all the way up, just click this box and drag it all the way up to 50R, it will play 100% in the right speaker. And you can see it up here. And the same thing with the left speaker. And we can move this line in time, and it will move from the left to right speaker for us. And it's a very cool trick you can use with many percussion sounds, and generally it's cool for drums. Okay, if we click this orange triangle, then we get back to C, which is center, which is the exact 1-to-1 balance or 50-50 balance of left and right speakers. And we can now draw a line, an automation line, just like with the rate of the arpeggiator. So let's go from right to the center and to, for example, to the left and then to the right. Okay, so we are going from 14R to the right, to the center, to 7L, and back to through the center, and back to 7R, which is on the right side. Okay, let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, so now I would like to copy this clip to play it once again in this area. So I could either copy this clip and paste it here, or I can just hold Alt or Option on a Mac, and I can drag it over here, and I can delete this area because I don't want it. And let's hear what it sounds like now. Okay, so now we can proceed on to the sixth instrument, which will be a pluck. And it's going to play a very simple melody. And it's really easy to make, so we could make a new MIDI track. But actually we don't need to do that. We can just go straight into plugins and find our Serum device. And we can drag it straight here. And it will open up a new MIDI track for us. You can open it up. And yeah, here we are with our Serum device open. Let's first change the waveform to a sine wave, just like with the bass. And let's drag the first envelope sustain knob to 0%. There we go. Now let's play it. Probably remember that the first envelope controls the volume, and if we turn the sustain down, the volume won't be sustained, so it will go down gradually in time, and we can control the time of it going down with the decay knob. Let's leave it as 1 second for now. And let's turn on the filter. We'll do a cool effect here. And let's map the first envelope also to the cutoff. So now it wants, it not only will affect the volume, but also this filter. It will just add a little bit of movement to our sound to make it more interesting. And also what we can do now is just decrease this line. And it will start from like 75%. So now it sounds like a pluck. And not only this envelope is affecting the volume, but also the filter cutoff. Let's go to the Effects tab really quickly, and let's turn on distortion. If we turn the drive up, it will sound very aggressive, but let's turn it down to 25%. Let's leave it as this. It's just a very slight effect. Yeah, we will add more distortion later. Distortion can be used for different purposes. A lot of distortion, if we turn the drive and mix all the way up, it would sound very aggressive, and we can use distortion to make instruments sound more present. Like remember with the bassline we made it more fat, so with the pluck we would add, it's called adding harmonics to the sound, and it will sound more present, especially on small speakers like laptops. However, if we turn this drive and mix knobs like to half, the sound will be more present, but it still won't be too dirty and gritty. You can just achieve the right balance with these knobs. But for now, let's turn it down to 25%, both of these knobs, and we'll change it later on. Okay, so now we can drag the plug MIDI file to our track. And also let's turn down the volume by 8 decibels, and let's hear what it sounds like. Okay, so next part. Let's add some toms at the end here. I added 2 toms at the end to make the beat more interesting, and for that purpose we're going to make an audio track. The usual way. And let's go back to our samples folder and find the tom sample, and let's place it here for now. And let's zoom in And I want to place it right here, right before the fourth part of the fourth bar, and also in this position. So the numbers are 3, 4, 3, 4 and 4, 4, 3. You can check these numbers on the top and then match your samples to those numbers on the timeline. But anyways, now if we turn down the volume, you need to do that because the samples are quite loud. Let's hear what it sounds like. These are two of the same pitches. So I would like the second tom to play a lower note. Now if we put that tom on a MIDI track, that would be simple. I would just play a lower note on that MIDI track and it would play a lower pitch. But we can also do this on an audio track, and that is called transposing. If you select the second tom and press Shift Tab, you'll go into the clip view, and here you can see the sample in depth, just like you see the MIDI clips in depth. And now you can locate the transpose knob over here, and you can drag it down by 3 steps, for example, and that's how you do the same thing as changing the pitch. Yeah, it's simple as that. And now let's hear what it sounds like. It's just lowering pitch by 3 semitones. It would be the same thing as we played on the MIDI track, 3 keys down from C3. Yeah, let's turn that volume a little bit down, even -15th. I think it's alright. Okay, so we've got all the elements. Let's give the whole thing a quick listen. I also fixed the volumes a little bit, so you can just match these volumes to mine. But don't worry about that too much. We'll work on the volumes at the end. Okay, so now let's start the mixing process, because we've got all of the elements, but I'm not sure they sound great together. If you want to achieve a good balance in the overall mix of the track, then we need to use some mixing tools. Okay, so let's start with the first track for now, and that's the bass. Let's solo the bass and the kick by pressing Command and clicking both of these solo buttons. And the common problem with mixing bass and kicks is that both of these instruments play low frequencies. And what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that if more instruments are playing the same frequencies, especially in the lower parts, things can sound really muddy. If our frequencies overlap too much, things start to sound very muddy. So we should be careful of playing the same frequencies as with many instruments, because that can cause the track to sound very muddy. However, there's a trick that you can use to avoid that, which is called sidechain compression. What it does is it decreases the volume of one track while another one is playing. So for example, here what we could do is we could decrease the volume of the bass when the kick hits. But after the kick hits, the volume would get back to normal. So let's get a compressor effect. Should be here in audio effects. Let's drag it onto the bass, after the bass. Let's click this arrow in here, turn on sidechain, and select audio from, which is going to be from our kick, because we're going to sidechain the bass to the kick. And now just drag the threshold down, and let's hear what it sounds like. So you can probably see that when this bar fills yellow, our bass is decreased in volume. You can see the volume jumping a little bit. So that's what the sidechain compressor does. And now we've got space for the kick, So let's just mess around with the settings of this compressor. Okay, so here are my settings. I chose an infinite ratio, 12 milliseconds of attack and 25 milliseconds of release time. And also I chose a minus 40 dB threshold. So all of these knobs, they just modify the curve of the volume going down. So for example, the attack knob, it controls if the sound disappears gradually or suddenly. And the release knob, on the other hand, controls how long it takes for the sound to come back. And the ratio and threshold, they control how much are we taking, how much of the sound is being reduced. Okay, so let's proceed to the kick. And what we can do with it is we can drag an EQ8. And I wanted to make it more snappy. An EQ8 is a filter effect. It's basically the same thing that we had in Serum, that low-pass filter. Probably remember that we automated that low-pass filter, it was moving. Here's the same thing, but this time we don't want to use a low-pass filter. This time we want to use something else. To use this effect, in short, you just need to move these yellow buttons, and that's how you add or remove frequencies. On the and the 1 and 4 yellow buttons are shelf filters, so they can bring up they can put like a shelf and bring up these frequencies. So let's drag the 4th dot into this position and let's hear what it sounds like. You can turn on and off the effect by clicking this button and you'll hear the difference. So you've got more of the snap in the kick, and I personally like that. And for sure it's now much more audible on different systems. Now we can proceed to the snare. Let's also drag an EQ8 in there. And what we want to do with it is we want to slightly boost the high frequency, because I like it that way. We want to change the first curve to this high pass filter, which is at 24 decibels, I think. Is a 48 decibels per octave high pass filter, which essentially what it does is it cuts off almost everything below this point. So the high frequencies are passing through and the lower frequencies we are cutting off. So that's why it's called a high pass filter. So let's set it like this. If you'd like to hear what we're cutting off, you can press this headphones button and you can click on this curve. You'll see some blue lines appearing, and that's basically what we are cutting off. Let's solo this track only. These are very, very low frequencies. It's pretty much only mud, so we don't need that. That will just interrupt our bass. So, okay, we can proceed to the main synth. So for the main synth, what you can do is you can just copy the EQ8 shape from the snare, select it, click Command C or Control C on the Windows, and you can paste it here onto the main synth, and it should fit. Okay, so, and we also don't need those frequencies. Okay, so you can set it like this, and now for the hi-hat, we actually won't change anything. I often sidechain the hi-hat to the kick, but in this case I chose simply not to, because it's now it sounds very human and I like it. And now let's hear what the plug sounds like with the main synth. Okay, now let's hear the plug with the main synth. So what I noticed is that the plug is playing simultaneously to the main synth, plus the plug is not too present. It's kind of somewhere lost in the mix. And if we wanted to draw our attention, then it should be much more present. So what we can do is we can simply sidechain the main synth to the plug, so that when the plug hits, the main synth's volume is reduced. And okay, so we don't have to drag another compressor, we can just drag the compressor from the bass and we can put it onto the main synth. I'm just dragging Option on Alt and putting it here. And let's change the audio from to the plug, of course, and let's hear what it sounds like now. I just dragged the threshold down a tiny bit. And now for the plug. This was a pure sine wave with some distortion on it. So what we can do is we can go to Audio Effects and find this overdrive and put it onto the track. And this is going to act almost the same as distortion. So let's tweak the settings a little bit. Okay, so now it's, I think, much more present. We can turn off the initial pop sound by dragging up the attack of the device a little bit on the envelope. Now what I did is I put an EQ 8 on this track. And I took the first shape, I drag it down like this, but because I wanted only to have the higher frequencies here, and if you drag down the Q, it will be more of a smooth transition here. Okay, sounds good, but we need much more volume. We can drag a utility here, best before the EQ8. You can of course move the effects around by dragging and dropping them. And let's put it up by 14 decibels. Sounds good to me. Now let's hear it with the main synth. And I set the EQ8 like this, and I also boosted the gain after the EQ8. This is like an utility inside the EQ8. So I boosted it all the way to 12 decibels. It should be like this, and you can just drag. Okay, so now for the toms. For the toms we can also take an EQ8 and we can place it there, and let's just put a high pass filter in there, and let's just cut out some the low end. Maybe this much would be alright, and maybe just boosting some. Okay, that would be all for all the instruments. Okay, so now I messed around with the volumes. Here's what I achieved. Let me tell you how setting up volumes works. So the actual volume of the track is always displayed by this green area, which is popping up in these bars. And of course, this is the left channel, this is the right channel. There's an important term to remember, which is called peak volume. And that is basically the highest point to which the green area got to. So to see the peak volume, you need to play the clip. For example, that's enough. And now on the tracks that we've played, these 4 tracks, we see in these upper boxes our peak volumes. We didn't play these, so it's infinite. And if a track has a peak volume over 0 dB, that means that at some point it exceeds 0 decibels, and it means that it's clipping, so the sound will come out distorted, and that's not nice. So that's why we're trying to work with lower peaks. That way we can always bring up the volumes at the end, and we're sure we are not clipping. So every track has also a triangle, like this thing. This is called a fader or a slider, and you can check out the exact position of the fader in this exact box, and you can also change its position from, for example, to 0. You can type in 0 and it will go back to 0. This triangle, this fader slider, this fader acts always like a utility at the end of every track. So all it does is brings up and down the volume. However, when you're trying to figure out the track's actual volume, and for example match your volumes to mine, you shouldn't always trust this triangle, because if you, for example, threw a utility onto this bass, okay, so let's do that, and I increased the gain, our peak volume would be higher. It is minus 34 by now. It's minus 22, but our fader is still in the exact same position. So it's not indicating our volume, it's just indicating position of the utility at the end. So you can just use it to quickly manipulate volumes when it's useful for achieving the right balance at the end of your production. So that's why measuring peak volumes is so essential, because it displays the accurate values of our volume. So I'll play the clip, I will play our track now, and you can match your peak volumes to mine. So first let's play it. So here we are, we've got all the peak volumes, and so how do you get your peak volumes to be exactly the same as mine? Is you need to play the clip back just as I did and check every track's peak level, and then you kind of have to estimate how much you need to bring your fader up so that this box matches mine. A useful thing would be to just type in all of these volumes in minus 23, minus 16, and then try to match the volumes. So just make sure you have the same peak volumes as I do. Measure your peak volumes and then bring up or down your tracks, and then measure your volumes once again and repeat the process, or just adjust your volumes however you like. So that will be the end of our very, very simple mixing process. And if you'd like to learn more about mixing, then make sure to check out our mixing course. And now we can proceed to the final process, which is mastering the track. And what it is just adding effects on the final track, which is here, which is called the master track. And that's where all of these tracks go to. They are all routed in here, and we've got a final fader here. And you can of course find it as well in the arrangement view at the bottom. So to view it, you need to simply click on this track, and we need to add 2 effects in there. So let's add an EQ 8 first. Also, let's already load up a limiter. And let's first start from the EQ. So let's play the track and let's see our frequencies here. A useful thing is you can click this little arrow and you can expand your EQ8 look. You can make it bigger, like this. So let's see our frequencies. So I think our track needs a little bit more of the higher frequencies. We see a lot of movement up here and not so much movement up. It goes downhill here. So we could take a high shelf and just boost these frequencies a tiny bit. And remember to be very careful about this, because this is going to affect the whole track. You can see this is an area which has a spike and which really sounds aggressive to my ears. So we can take like a bell filter . Okay, so now the last element of our track is going to be a limiter, and it's going to just bring up the signal of our track. And let's take a look at the master track in session view first. Make sure you're in session view and make sure this the fader is precisely at 0. If it's not, then you can click here, click 0 and enter, and it should get back. Then let's play the track. And we see that our peak level is precisely at -8.82. Yours should be somewhere around this number, but if it's not, then don't worry. Just make sure your volumes are right here. Okay, so if we leave the track as it is now, and for example, we uploaded it to Soundcloud or Spotify or YouTube or anywhere on the internet, it would be much quieter in comparison to other tracks. And you want to boost your volume at the end, right? So to fix this, we need to boost the level, but we cannot exceed the level of 0 dB. So the track level cannot turn red. And that's what a limiter is very useful for. So it has a gain knob, which can boost or decrease your signal level. But the sweet thing about limiters is that they have a ceiling parameter, and this controls the maximum volume of our track. So, however, if the signal coming from this gain, after this gain, exceeds the ceiling parameter, which here is -0.3, it will stop the volume at this point, so it will never exceed this exact point. So just the limiter will decrease the volume of our track so that we are not clipping. Okay, so if our peak on the master is -8.82, then if we put 8.82 on the limiter gain, then we should end up perfectly at 0. So let's do that. So let's put 8.82 and make sure the ceiling parameter is at 0 for now. And our peak point should be 0 here. Even though we boosted the signal by exactly how much our peak volume was, it's still too little. So if we want the peak to be exactly at 0, we have to boost it, for example, 8.92, and let's check the peak level now. You see we are already at 0 decibels. So you can mess around with the limiter. If you want your track to be louder, to sound louder, then you can increase the volume of the gain even more. But remember to be careful with that. If you increase it too much, your average volume of the track will be higher, but the downside of this will be that the track will lack dynamics, so it will flatten your volume exactly to the ceiling. It's not fun to listen to tracks with too much limiting on them, but it's a cool way in which you can just increase your volume and you're always sure you are not exceeding the ceiling parameter. Okay, so now to export the track, you'll need to go back to arrangement view and click on the bass clip, or just select the area that you want to export and go to File, Export Audio, Video, and the same thing can be done by clicking Shift, Command and R, and yeah, it should work the same on Windows, probably Shift, Control and R, and then you can just click Export, type in #PML, start, and save it. Okay, I already have it, so I won't save it. Now we can upload the track to Soundcloud with the tag PML start, and we can check out your track and give you feedback. So thanks for watching, and remember you can always ask questions in the comments, and if anything is unclear, also check out more videos by us, and thanks for watching, and see you in the next videos. Bye.